So I think it's finally time to talk about this bad boy here. Now this is a jig that I made to make 3D stars. And I'll leave a link in the description there for you guys. Now if you've watched that video, a lot of you did, you know that I didn't provide plans. But that's going to change, alright? I'm going to give you, I don't want to call them plans, but I'll call them drawings, alright? There'll be a bird's eye view of all the angles that I've used, just to help you guys build this jig. Now the reason I didn't do it is because it ended up being such a convoluted jig with all these little parts and pieces and attachments, and it's kind of a two-part jig. This first part for cutting the sharp angles, and then the second part for cutting the inner angles there. And you know, I kind of mentioned that I think there's an easier way to do this, or actually I shouldn't say easier, I think there's a better way of doing this, and I already have some plans for the, well, not physical plans, but plans in my head for the future. I got to be specific there because you guys really wanted those plans. So I apologize for that. But anyhow, the reason I wasn't wanting to provide plans is because I didn't think you'd want them, because I talked about all these changes that I wanted to make to this thing. But it seems like no matter what I say, people still want this. So I'm just going to provide something simple for you guys. It'll be on my Patreon account. It is $2 to be a member, and I hope you guys don't mind. It was kind of a really time-consuming process to create this thing, and even though they're not like super duper plans, I think $2 is hopefully worth it for you guys. Huge caveats though, right? I do want to change this, and the other thing is, this is very specific to my saw, right? This 12-inch Bosch here. So you'll have to take everything with kind of a grain of salt, and you might need to make some adjustments to make it fit your saw properly. All right, so I guess we can get to it. Where do I even start here? So I think maybe I'll just show you what it looks like on the saw here, and quickly just kind of give you an idea of what all the pieces look like underneath here, because you're only going to be getting a bird's eye view there. So so this is a piece of plywood that goes right through the entire length. This is 5/8 thick. This is also 5/8 thick. As you can see, I kind of used a bunch of scraps there, but you could just use one piece of plywood 5/8 thick, stacked on top of each other there. These are just 1x4s, and I've got some sandpaper on here. Super useful. These pieces here are what I use to clamp to the fence on either side. And also 5/8 thick. And you'll notice that I screwed them on from the back here rather than putting these on top of this piece. And that was for a specific reason. I needed everything to be this way a little bit more, because when you're cutting something on an elevated platform and you're not plunging the blade all the way down, you aren't going to be able to cut something that's sitting right up against the fence. For example, you can see the cut line there ends right there. If you're making a normal cut with a miter saw, it's going to go a little bit deeper. Actually, it's going to go right up to probably over here. Yeah, so anyways, just had to make sure I was going to be able to cut through the entire piece of wood there. I got to put the camera down. Okay, I think that's better. So this is the first part of the jig. Said it was a two-part thing, and I'll try to make this quick and easy. But basically, the goal here is to take a 1x4, make a compound cut, and be able to just flip these over, and you get your bevel without cutting the bevels, which is kind of cool. You pretty much have to watch that video to understand what's going on here. But I set my saw to 25 degrees. And I think in the future, I might want to set it to 30. But if I do that, I got to change everything. So anyways, that'll just give steeper bevels. But for now, 25 degrees. This is set for 19.5. And the saw is set at 0. And let me just show you what's going on here. Again, you'll probably have to adjust your toggle clamp so that it fits your saw. Otherwise, you know, you might have problems there. Be be really careful with this guy here. That one gets real close to the blade. So the center of the jig is actually over here. That's for the second part. So this one, you have to kind of slide it over this way a little bit. And the maximum width stock that you can use with this system is 4 inches. I have some ideas for a table saw jig that can maybe use a 1x6 to make a bigger star. Actually, that was a question I had for you guys. Are you opposed to me making this on a table saw, or do you like my videos because I use mostly a miter saw? I'm just curious to know about that, because I can do either or. I would like to make a bigger 3D star, to be honest with you. I was a little bit bummed out. This one made, let me measure it. This was a regular 1x4, which was 3.5 inches wide, and it made a 19-inch 3D star. So a 4-inch one would probably be like, who knows, like, I don't know, 21 inches or something maybe. I'm just making that up, but anyhow, I think it'd be cool to have like a, I don't know, a 30-inch one. That'd be sweet, right? All right. Sorry for my voice. I've been sick for a little bit, but it's given me the opportunity to work on this stuff. So yeah, anyways, hopefully that helps you with the setup there. I just put some C-clamps over here. Once it's clamped down, it feels really solid. And once I got all these toggles down, the combination of the toggles and the sandpaper, I may as well just show you here. Get it all lined up. Ish. It is rock solid, so you don't have to hold anything with your hand, which is nice. And I did have to put this inner one here because I found that without this clamp here, after making the cut, sometimes the blade, when it was still spinning, it would pull this one that way, and it would damage the joint a little bit. So just the one clamp seemed to work fine for that. I guess I should mention this half of the jig. This jig is intended to make 2D stars as well, all sorts of different stars. I mentioned that in the other video, which you can go watch. So you can kind of ignore this half. This is basically to do left cuts and right cuts. I had this idea to take old picture frames and cut a left and a right side and make stars out of picture frames. Never got around to it, so you guys can do that if you want to. Now, the other interesting thing about this is you can actually, if you want to do different projects, you can adjust this piece to different angles if you like. Maybe by putting a pivot point up here, or just doing what I did. Like I have settings for 18 degrees, 20 degrees, and 19.5, depending on just where I put the screws in. But I'll let you guys kind of sort through that. The main angle you need, though, is 19.5 for the 3D star and a 25-degree bevel. All right, let's move on to the part 2 of the jig. I'll set it up. Did turn out pretty nice, actually. Just admiring my work there. I know, what a nerd. All right. I decided to record the setup. I wasn't going to, but I thought, what the hell. I'll show you what it takes to switch everything over. Just lost my microphone there, but I set it back up. So that just pops off. And we don't need this one either. And by the way, the plans, like for this thing, it's not going to include like where to put these holes, right? Because I figure if you have a different saw from mine, your setup might be a little bit different, right? Like I don't know what your blade guard looks like, or if anything's going to be in the way or whatever, right? So You can just figure that out for yourself. Just a heads up. And this comes off too. Now, we've got a few things. I will talk about these two big holes in just a second here. So these go somewhere around here. These go... Oh, I wish I labeled these now. At least I got the right side right. And... Actually, I think it's over here. Yeah, one of the things I don't like about this whole thing is actually having to take one jig apart to build the second jig. So I would actually, I think in the future, just have two completely separate jigs. I thought it would be like convenient or cool to like have a jig that can transform from one to another, but yeah, it's just a pain to actually set this up. Yeah, anyways, so if you do make this, maybe just make a separate, completely separate second jig for this part. Anyhow, let's start by bolting these down here. Again, not the best types of bolts to be using for this. Threaded inserts I think would be much better, but I was just kind of going with what I had. So these just slide in from underneath. I mean, they are solid. Pop these on top. Now, I originally was I just screwed these triangles in there. But I realized that I needed the ability to be able to tilt these slightly. When I say slightly, I mean sometimes I just need to make an adjustment like that or that in order to get all these angles to fit right without gaps. I got some lock washers on there. Didn't want things coming loose with the vibration. Okay, now let's talk about the placement here. So these angles right here, 36 degrees, but you got to set your saw to 54 to get those cuts, right? I don't know if you guys know that. As a beginner, I was always having trouble with that, but yeah, so set your saw to 54 degrees in order to get these triangular bits here. And hopefully that makes sense for you guys, but maybe the drawings will help as well. And to line these things up, so this is exactly the center of the jig. And I actually had cut an entire triangle and bolted it down and then cut right through it with my blade. That's originally how I set that up. But of course, the problem that I was having originally was getting it perfectly perpendicular to the blade and having both angles the exact same on either side of the blade. Because what we're going to be doing, or the goal was to be able to just slide this here, make a cut, not have to move anything. The blade is set at 0 degrees, then flip it over here, make another cut, and then that's it, right? So to line these things up so one's not like this and one's like that or whatever, right? I ended up adding this piece to the back over here. So let's go ahead and screw that on. And then I use shims to get a very even setup. So this is parallel to the fence and the jig. Perfectly parallel. No, that's a 2x4 setup. Lots of parts to this jig. Part of the problem, but I mean it works, right? So I don't know. Maybe it's not a problem. so once you got that one screwed in there, we're going to use some shims to make sure everything's lined up properly. So I went ahead, and I guess I should show these because these are going to come in handy later on as well. I made a variety of different sized shims that match up, just to keep them on hand. And I also got some pieces of cardboard and some playing cards. If you watch that long video, it'll explain to you how to use them. But basically, if I've got two shims that are the exact same size and I stick them in here now, right? It doesn't matter what the starting point is. All I got to do, push it against that, and I know that both sides are exactly the same. Now, it might not be the perfect angle that I need, but that's why I've allowed for micro adjustments here. And I had an interesting back and forth with a guy the other day saying, hey, you know, I did everything you did and it didn't work, got big gaps, blah, blah, blah. Why don't you give the proper angles, proper sizes, proper this, that, whatever. Thing is, this is a pretty common thing to happen, to have gaps in stars. Almost every single one of my videos, I try to show that I have gaps, and then I make some adjustments, and then I don't have gaps. What I'm talking about here is gaps in the joints over here, right? And I always have to do what's called micro adjustments, or at least that's what I call them, micro adjustments. He was asking, what are the angles after you make the micro adjustments? Well, the goal with the micro adjustments is to get an exact 72 degrees along this joint here, right? Or if you're looking at it at half the triangle here, or half the diamond, right in here should be 36 degrees. And this one 36 degrees. Both add up to make 72. 72 times 5 make a 360 degree. So if that guy watches this video, hopefully that helps you understand what I'm getting at. So if I'm having to make a micro adjustment, it means that my original angle was probably off by like just a little bit. You know, it could be like 0.01 degrees or maybe 0.03 degrees. And with my other like 5-point stars, the 2D ones, I just found like if I'm actually setting a saw to, let's say 36 degrees or 54, depending on what I'm doing, how do I know if it's exactly at 36 degrees and not like to begin with, and not like 36.2 or 36.3, or maybe it's 35.9, right? So then you kind of got to go back and like readjust things. Anyways, so once you have this equal on both sides, then you can just bolt it down. Definitely watch that other longer video, because you know, it might have some additional information that might help you guys out. So I do like that these bolts are rock solid. Maybe these are better than threaded inserts. I don't know, because I'm super confident that these will not move and I won't get any sort of kickback or anything. All right, so now for these little guys here. These need some explaining. Okay, so let's talk about these parts here. So the reason that this section here is so far away from the fence is because once we slide this piece in here, we need some clearance over here for the points, right? So if you're making a bigger star, for example, a 2D star, there's lots of room to make a pretty big 2D star with this jig. When it comes to 3D stars in this one, like I said earlier, maxes out at the 4-inch board, so I don't think it'd be too much longer here. But if your saw is not quite as big as mine, maybe you have a 10-inch saw, or maybe the slider's not as long, there is some room here. You can slide this entire thing over that way by probably, yeah, who knows, maybe like maybe 1.5 inches or so, if you're missing the clearance on your saw to get the blade all the way to this point here. Now, to figure out where to put these, I kind of just guessed, but I'll give you some, what am I going to do with my plans here? I guess I'll just let you know the distance has to be equal from here to here on both sides, right? But also from here to here and here to here. If any of it is off, if one's like slightly off a little bit, when you make those cuts, when you stick one side in here and cut it and then stick it in the other side, it'll be off center. So there's a couple ways to fix that. If you misdrill a hole, I did that over here. Let me show you. I couldn't figure out why nothing was working, but I completely drilled it in the wrong spot. But I just filled it with a bamboo barbecue skewer and then re-drilled it. And then I got a couple little holes for different sizes if I want to go bigger or smaller. But you can also use shims to adjust that. So anyhow, this was the most time-consuming part, was figuring out where to put this. Yeah, so sorry, not figuring out where to put this, but like lining each side up so that both sides were exactly the same. Now, if you can't get it exactly the same and you're losing your freaking mind, I'll show you what to do. Let me just screw these in here real quick. Not too tight, they got to be able to rotate. There we go. So, if one side is not quite right, this is cool, right? Just boom, done, boom, done. All right. I love that. So if it's not quite right, you can just stick these shims in there. So for example, if this is not quite in the center after you make your cuts on either side, it just means that one of the facets is longer than the other, and you have to shorten the longer side. So for example, if this side was too long, I would just stick a shim in on this side, and you'll have to decide how thick. Might just be the thickness of a piece of cardboard. And anyways, you put a shim in there, slide this over there, and make your cut again. And that should shorten the length of this facet, because as this tapers down, it gets shorter and shorter and shorter, right? So hopefully that explains it for you. You guys can check out that other video again. I know I keep pushing that other video, but there's just so much to explain with this. And that's kind of why I was reluctant to make plans. So anyways, yeah, the shims came in handy though. It was a handy little trick. And if you want to make a 2D star that's much bigger than this, obviously this piece will be in the way. So you just need to drill new holes further out and move these outward. And then you can make a much larger star up until the point where it hits that part of the fence though. But I think that would make a pretty big star. I haven't tried yet. All right, I think I'll set this up on the saw and give you a quick visual, and also just mention these attachments here. I basically, for the first part of the jig, I made all these risers so that this jig could do 1x4s as well as 2x4s. So basically when setting up these ones here, I put this under here, like this and like this, and then screw it down, and it kind of raises everything up. And then you can make stars out of 2x4s instead of just the 1x4s. I think that would be more pertaining to the 2D stars though. Anyways, let me get this on the saw for you guys. And here it is all set up. Just got to make sure everything is nice and centered. Of course, I would be clamping each side down as well. And yeah, just remember that centering is important. And if you're off by a millimeter, everything will be off by a millimeter. But again, you can compensate by using shims. The other thing I wanted to mention is when you're building this platform, make sure you got enough clearance here for all your knobs so you can use it. If this is too long, just go ahead and trim it down. I don't think it'll be a problem. Now once it's all set up, go ahead and slide that in there, make your cut, switch it over here and cut it again. And then you'll have your piece cut. Remember not to cut through the entire thing. Always set your little depth stop there. I have almost cut through both layers multiple times. My bad, my bad. Alright, thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for all your support. Thank you to all my Patreons. I've been blown away by all the support there, and really appreciate it. I hope those drawings help you guys out there, and you guys try it out, and who knows, maybe you'll modify it and make it even better.